There's one topic the Parliamentary Labour Party seems pretty keen to avoid this conference: Palestine. But the public have different ideas. Here's what happened during Chancellor Rachel Reeves' speech.
After 2 years of genocide, mass starvation of Palestinians.
We understand your cause and we are recognising a Palestinian state, but we are now a party in government, not a party of protest.
So she'd clearly practiced that. It was sort of when she sounded sort of most passionate throughout the whole speech was her response to that. We are now a party of government, not a party of protest. I mean, it did make me feel very annoyed actually about the whole, I suppose, how meaningless it is to recognise Palestine when you're not doing anything to stop the destruction of Palestine. You say, okay, we're going to let you be completely destroyed. We're going to let all the people be starved. But also this state, which is at the moment completely unviable because the people we're refusing to sanction are expanding all their settlements in it, and in Gaza doing a genocide, we're still gonna recognise what's going on. It's a bit like sort of if you say the Holocaust is going on, you're not going to sanction Hitler, but you say, but we'll recognise Israel afterwards. It's like it doesn't really make much difference when a genocide is going on. That was a pretty small demonstration from within the conference hall. Outside it on Sunday, however, there was a much bigger event. So as Labour Party delegates arrived in Liverpool, they were greeted by the sight of around 100 Defend Our Juries protesters peacefully demonstrating about the prescription of direct action group Palestine Action under the Terrorism Act. That prescription was carried out by then Home Secretary Yvette Cooper in July. Since then, it's become new Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's problem. And by holding up signs saying, I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action, the protesters were allegedly committing a crime under counter-terrorism law, meaning police soon began making arrests and carrying them away. Merseyside police report that they arrested 66 people under the Terrorism Act at Sunday's protest. Amongst them was this wheelchair user.
No, take me with the chair.
Please pick up the chair.
It's my right to remain in my assistive technology. Take the chair.
Thank you.
That's probably not why they joined the police force. An 83-year-old was also arrested, and one protester had to have oxygen delivered for her breathing aid. According to organisers Defend Our Juries, it took police 9 hours to arrest all of the protesters. Since the prescription of Palestine Action in July, over 1,600 people have been arrested for breaking the ban, with further mass actions planned for London this weekend. Other pro-Palestine Labour members have used more formal channels for forcing Israel's genocide in Gaza onto the agenda at Labour conference. So one of the motions put to Labour conference was backed by trade unions Unison and ASLEF and called on the government to employ all means reasonably available to it to prevent the commission of genocide in Gaza. The motion also made it Labour policy to fully suspend the arms trade with Israel and the UK-Israel Trade and Partnership Agreement, and for Labour to accept the findings of the UN Commission of Inquiry. Now, that last clause is particularly significant because that's the UN Commission that found Israel to be committing genocide. Now, that, of course, has long been a conclusion the Labour government have been unwilling to draw. And the Labour leadership did, in fact, table their own motion, which sought to fudge the issue. So Foreign Office Minister Hamish Falconer proposed a motion which suggested the UN said Israel is at risk of committing genocide in Gaza. Now, that's just false. So 2 weeks ago, the UN clearly concluded that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, arguing that the country met both the mental and material components of the crime, so in terms of intent and in terms of consequences. Responding to the Labour leadership's motion, John McDonnell said this: I am absolutely horrified that the minister, so Hamish Falconer, and the leadership is seeking to deliberately mislead Labour members. The UN Commission of Inquiry was unequivocal. It said Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza. So you have these two motions that went to Parliament today. One of them said, we accept what this UN Commission said. The other said, we kind of accept what it said, but by the way, it said something it didn't. Which is that there's a risk of genocide instead of what it actually said, which is there is genocide. Now, just before we came on air, Labour conference passed the motion backed by delegates and the unions, which affirms that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. That's the first time the Labour Party has officially recognised that. the government's motion watering down the findings of the UN report has been rejected. So, Ash, as far as I understand, there were people sort of at conference who were complaining because they felt like it had been a stitch-up because the only people called to speak in the debate were those who backed the government motion, and no one was called who backed the motion from members and trade unions, which, said Israel was committing genocide. Well, an attempted stitch-up because, in fact, the grassroots motion passed. So it is now official Labour policy that Israel is committing a genocide and that therefore all sort of trade relationships with the country should be cut off. Is that significant?
I think the reason why it's important is that it becomes another means by which you can sort of isolate and highlight the absurdity of the Labour government position, which is, oh no, we think this is very bad. Oh, we think there should be a ceasefire and there should be aid. But ultimately, our government position is that we don't think that a genocide is taking place. All right. So the more you can isolate that position from international human rights organizations, from international bodies such as the UN, from the trade union movement, from the Labourship, and now from, what is the Labour Party, official position, the more pressure you can put on a Labour government. And I think that that's where its significance really lies. The other thing is in terms of it then becomes a possible dividing line in any future Labour leadership race. So we're going to talk about Mr. Andy Burnham in a little bit, I imagine, who's sort of flying a kite, shall we say. He's not going anywhere near launching a leadership bid yet. He's just sort of seeing what the conditions are. Is that if you can establish that, conference voted this thing, and it's unequivocal that Israel is committing a genocide, and that if something meets the legal definition of genocide, it means that there are certain, responsibilities that every country that's, signed up to, International Convention on Genocide, it affects what you say you're going to do in government. So I think it's really a kind of campaigning tool and a way of exerting pressure on politicians than it's going to have any immediate impact on Labour policy.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of sort of the moment where everyone's going to try and deny what happened, the fact that it was Labour Party policy that a genocide was taking place and still the Labour Party in government sent arms to Israel, I mean, should cause some people to feel very uncomfortable, to say the very least. Very much related, the global Sumud flotilla is drawing closer to Gaza, carrying on board a symbolic amount of aid, as well as journalists and activists. Now, amongst them is our colleague, Kieran Andreou. Drone attacks on the ships last week have left us all pretty worried about what could happen when they cross into Israeli-controlled waters in the next few days. Even more worrying was the complete non-response from our own government to the threat posed to British citizens like Kieran on board. So you can imagine the relief when other less cowardly governments stepped in. So this footage shows first an Italian naval frigate, and then further along the horizon, a small fleet of Spanish naval vessels dispatched by the governments of those two countries to accompany the flotilla. It's being reported that earlier today, Turkey sent its own vessel to support the flotilla as it nears far more politically dangerous waters. Earlier today, Kieran sent us this update from the flotilla.
If Israeli intel is to be believed, we expect to be intercepted either tomorrow night or Wednesday night. And by intercepted, I mean kidnapped in international waters by Israeli commandos and brought to the nearest port to be processed by the Israeli authorities. And we never had any delusions or naivety about the high possibility that this might happen, right? Look at previous missions. That's always been the outcome, the end result. But nonetheless, we are sailing to get this aid to Gaza, and we are absolutely committed to that while preparing for, it now looks like, the probable outcome of interception. I would say spirits remain remarkably high, given that this mission is now twice as long than initially anticipated. Everybody's tired, everybody's a bit smelly, everybody misses people back home very dearly. But spirits remain really good, and the nearer we get to Gaza, the better they become, palpably. And even if we are intercepted, there are other really important political dimensions to this mission. Number one, to keep visibility on Gaza as much as possible. And number two, to raise the political stakes for Israel. So at the beginning of this mission, Israel was dismissing us as Hamas, saying that we have Hamas links. And they might still be doing that tacitly. But since the Italian, the Spanish, and now the Turkish navies have got involved, it is very improbable. It's not impossible because we're dealing with Israel, but it's very improbable that there will be a violent interception. It was looking a lot more likely 10 days ago, the drone attacks and so on. So the involvement of those navies has been a massive game changer, and it has been drawn into reality by the flotilla. And it's an example of other states banding together to try, in their own very imperfect and complex ways, with no doubt very complex motivations underlying it, to keep Israel in check when it flagrantly attempts to break international law. The Turkish Navy initially was here to escort the Red Crescent so that it could deliver more humanitarian aid to our ships, to our boats, to be brought to Gaza. And it was also helping with the rescue of a boat that's now been decommissioned from the fleet, ran into trouble last night. It's unclear at this time whether the Turks will stay with us or whether they won't stay with us. Nonetheless, it's a very important intervention.
We'll be keeping you updated on Kieran and the flotilla's progress over the next few days, so keep an eye on social media as well as Novara Media's YouTube channel for updates. I think the fact of those 3 international warships now, what exactly their motives are is somewhat confusing. Of course, we reported on the Italians joining them afterwards, and then people on the flotilla were saying actually the Italians were working in hock with the Israelis because they were asking the flotilla to hand over aid to the Israelis. But the fact that they're there, I think, makes this very different to previous flotillas and does make it sort of less clear what the outcome is going to be.